Hi, I'm Jen Tripp, Executive Director of the Arlington Chamber of Commerce. One of the benefits of membership is networking events. Each month, the Women's Networking Group hosts a breakfast with a speaker. Christie Burnside recently presented The Happiness Habit. Ann is a developmental psychologist who specializes in mindfulness, positive psychology, and relational health. I hope you enjoy her presentation as she teaches us how to explore the mindful path to happiness and habits we can practice to grow happiness every day.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you for coming out. So I'm just going to say a little bit and then I'll invite some participation, so we'll go in and out like that. The first thing I want to say is that despite the differences in our experience or our life circumstances, our age, and whatever we want to call it, all those differences, that at the human level, we are basically all the same. At the human level, we all want to be happy. That is our deepest longing. And we don't want any problems. And so is there anyone in the room that does not apply? That does not apply? Okay, so at that level, we are all the same. And I don't know if you know this, but when I finally understood this, I had a lot of free time on my hands. That the only things we get to control in this life are what we ourselves say and do. Speech and behavior. That's it. Two things. And so if you were to look around at how people behave, knowing that everybody wants to be happy and free from problems, but you were to observe people on a regular basis, you would see that it doesn't quite line up. Let me explain what I mean. So maybe some of this applies to you. I know all of it has applied to me at some point or another in my life. So we think, and think some more about how we're going to get what we want. Then we try to manipulate and control things so that it's just the way we want it, so that we don't have any problems, and that we get what we want. Then we get frustrated because we may not know this, but we can't control things or other people. But we keep trying to do that, it doesn't really work out. So we get more upset, and then what do? We try harder. We try harder, or we start to blame other people or ourselves. And we do blame ourselves, even more harshly than we blame other people. So as harsh as you think you might be able to be with somebody else, you're harsher than that toward yourself. And we all are. So then we start to work harder, right? And then we start to get a little tired, so we need to relax. But the way that we do that is we distract ourselves. So we don't really ever relax. We get busy with shopping or the computer or TV or this, that, and the other thing, right? So we can get lost in our activity quite a bit, and we mistake it for relaxation, which it isn't. So all of this activity and wanting and working so hard, it leaves us dissatisfied. But even in those moments where we are satisfied a little bit, maybe for a while, there's this underlying discontent that I've got to keep working at this so that I don't lose what I have, right? So we have this longing always there, and we have this busyness trying to meet that longing. And then in the moments where it does work out for us, we are stressed, whether we know it or not, because we don't want to lose it. So that's a lot. That's a lot that's going on at the same time. So what I want to start with is to tell you that happiness is an inside job. It doesn't have to do with all the stuff we think it has to do with, all the stuff out there. Having things go a certain way, having people talk to us a certain way, having people treat us a certain way, and so on and so forth. It doesn't depend on that. It depends on our capacity to be at ease with life as it is. Because again, we don't get to control life. Life is what life is, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. But we do get to control how we relate to whatever's happening, and that's where mindfulness comes in, and I'll get back to that in a little bit. So happiness begins with, or at least the path to happiness, begins with something we call right understanding. And I don't mean right as in right versus wrong. I mean right as in appropriate, whole, complete. And so I'm going to tell you a little bit about what that is. It's about understanding the way things are so we don't get so confused and stressed out when things aren't the way we think they should be, which is a lot of the time. So life is a glorious mess. It's a glorious mess, right? Sometimes we get what we want, sometimes we don't. Whenever my kids complain, I say, oh, you're unhappy because you didn't get what you want? Yeah, that happens to me all the time. You know, let's figure out how you can be okay with that, because that's going to keep happening. Like, that's not going to change. But we get to change how we relate to life as it is. So life is messy, and sometimes we get what we want, and sometimes we don't, and sometimes people are nice, and sometimes they aren't, and sometimes we feel strong, and sometimes we don't. And it's a glorious mess, like I say. We're all the same in terms of also our human vulnerabilities. We are all subject to illness, right? Who has been sick this year, anyone? Okay. We're all subject to illness. We're all subject to pain of many kinds, you know, emotional and physical. We are subject to loss. You know, we have something, then we don't. So this isn't to like bring us down. It's just to look at reality. Like, we're all the same that way too. No one is immune from the things that happen in life. If you're alive, you're not immune to life. So understanding that when things don't go our way, when we feel pain, physical or emotional pain, it doesn't mean that there's a problem. It doesn't mean there's something wrong with us. It just means we're alive and life has this stuff in it sometimes, and here it is right now for us. So understanding that is really important because we take it really personally, at least I do, if I'm not careful, if I'm not awake. I can take it really personally when things don't go my way. How could she do that? How could she not do that? How could he say that? How could he not say this, right? How could I do that? How could I make that mistake? So that's the first bit, that life is a glorious mess and we're all in it together. No one's immune from that. We often make it worse, though. We often make it worse because we continue to want what we want, to be happy and have no problems. And we continue to try to work really hard to make that happen, instead of looking directly at what's actually happening, right? So we still work really hard, and we get all worked up in the mind as well as the body. Mind and body are two different things. They do different things, but they're connected. So whatever's going on in the mind is going to reflect somehow in the body, and vice versa, right? So let's do a little exercise together for a moment. I'm going to invite you to stay right where you are, to sit quietly, to close your eyes for just a minute or two. And I want you to listen to my voice and notice what's going on in your mind and in your body as you hear me. Okay? Well, this will be very short, then we'll talk about it. All right? So I'm going to invite the bell to begin the silence, your silence, and then I'll ring it again to indicate the end of the exercise. So get comfortable in your body and close your eyes and just listen to my voice. Yes. 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 No. 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 So open your eyes And if you would be willing to share, what did you notice? What did you notice? Yes, in the back.
When you were saying yes, I felt more relaxed, calmer, and I had little sayings in my mind like, yes, I can do this, yes, I can, whatever it was. And then when you said no, I was like, oh, I don't really like that. It makes me feel uncomfortable inside, and I was trying to still continue with positive thoughts instead, and it was very distracting.
So did everybody hear a comment from the other side of the room? Raise your hand if you had a similar experience. So look around, look around. And who would like to say some thank you? Who would like to say anything more? Yes?
Well, the yes could have gone on forever. No, I couldn't wait for it to end.
Right, me too.
Mm-hmm, yes?
Also, the yes, I couldn't help but smile when you were saying yes. And then with the no, I'm like, oh, I don't like this at all.
Right.
Felt really shut down.
Yeah? A couple more comments over here?
I'm very visual, so the yes felt like sunshine, open, blue sky, and the no felt dark and cave-like.
Yes?
Each time you said yes, I felt this little like uplift. And then when you said no, it was like,
Yeah.
it was, I could feel it.
Karen?
Two things. One, I appreciated someone saying, okay, you can relax now, get into your body. Sometimes I don't seem to do that for myself enough. But the minute you start doing the yes, no, I started thinking, oh, what you want us to do, this is a game, I'm supposed to feel this, you know what I mean?
Uh-huh.
So then I tried to ignore the yes, no, and I was pretty successful at just trying to keep in my body.
Okay.
I don't know, because there's this thing in me where they think yes, yes, and then no, no. And I hate it when people are trying, I feel like someone's trying to make me feel something.
Yeah.
So I know that's all probably too complicated for this hour.
No, that's okay. Right, and that was the question, that was the instruction. Listen and notice what happens in your mind and in your body, right? Now, I want to tell you that stuff's always happening in your mind and in your body. I asked you to listen to it this time for a minute, but most of the time, we are not listening to it. We are not. But it's there, and we behave according to what's there, but we're not aware, all right? And so I want to say that it is normal and a very common response for people to have a different experience of hearing the yes versus hearing the no in the mind and body. And that's because no can be perceived as a threat, and our brain evokes the stress response, and we start to get worked up. We start to get worked up a little bit. So that's normal. We notice some discomfort in the mind and the body when we perceive a threat. We also do shut down. Somebody mentioned that. Feeling shut down, dark, closed, this is what happens. And when we're like that, we're not at ease. We're not at ease. It's dis-ease. That's what that is. And so the lesson that I want to highlight is that we come into contact with all kinds of stimulation all day long, and we automatically perceive it as pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral, which means probably we didn't notice it at all. With pleasant comes liking. Oh, I like that. That feels good. With unpleasant comes disliking, right? And followed by, the liking is usually followed by reaching for more of, and the dislike is usually followed by pushing away. Again, in the mind, and sometimes in our behavior, and that's the relationship that our mind-body system has to the stimuli that we pick up all day long. So there's not a problem to have resistance to negative stuff. It's there for a reason. It's part of our survival instinct. If we didn't have it, I wouldn't be here, and neither would you. So that is not the problem. The problem is that we can get really lost in that resistance because our brains are much better at holding on to negative stuff than positive stuff. And again, that's because of our survival instinct, and in psychology that's called the negativity bias, and that is hardwired. So we're going to notice negative stuff. We're on the lookout for it. Not just notice it. We are on the lookout for it, okay? Because we're hardwired that way. So you could say, and I do, we're wired for survival, not happiness. But happiness is the thing that we get to create, that we get to learn. It's a skill that we can learn. So the good news is that even though that's kind of how things are by default, we don't have to just let it be. We can learn to relate to our experiences as they are, noticing the like and the dislike, noticing how it feels in the body, where the mind goes, and getting some clarity over how we want to relate. I'm going to show you a quick little equation over here. So in life, pain is guaranteed and suffering is optional, okay? So, so suffering equals pain. This is the thing that's a given in life, times resistance. And the resistance is the pushing away. So let's say this is pain, and this is resistance. So let's talk about some inevitable pains. Let's just hear from the audience a little bit. What are some things that come up that are painful?
People die.
People die. All right, so there's, that on 0 to 10, that's probably up here, right? Sorry, over here. So let's say that. How much do you think we resist that experience if we're not working to relate to it differently with less resistance? What do you think is the default kind of resistance? So is it high? Do we have a high resistance to losing someone we love? So let's do this. This is a really smart crowd. You picked the toughest one right off the bat, okay? So here's the amount of suffering. Just visually, we have filled the grid, okay? Now, this has happened. We cannot change this. Okay, the only thing we can work with is this over here. This is the only thing we can work with. Now, right, this is guaranteed and it's already happened. This is the thing we get to work with. So this is what we get to work with to affect this. To reduce our resistance is to reduce our suffering. Okay? I'm going to show you that. Now, when we lose a loved one, reducing resistance can be hard. Well, it can be hard in anything. If we reduce our resistance even a little, we're reducing our suffering. Okay? So that's true whether it's an extreme case in terms of grief, but it's also true in a traffic light, when your kid is yelling at you, when you have a disagreement with someone at work, when you have an argument at home, when you were saving money for a certain pair of shoes and then you go and they don't have them anymore, or whatever. So that works. Boots. That works regardless of the pain. And the other thing about pain is that the brain doesn't discriminate between mental, emotional pain and physical pain. It is our mind that does all that work. Have you ever said to yourself, well, yes, I'm in pain, but I'm not in as much pain as so-and-so, so I really shouldn't feel this bad, right? Our brains don't care. Pain is pain according to the brain. It's the mind that sort of gets in there and messes things up a little bit. So there are this bit about wanting things to be other than they are, not wanting things to be as they are, and trying to scheme and manipulate to make that all work out just perfectly. That is a set of unwholesome mind states that contribute to suffering. That raises our resistance and it raises our suffering. So the good news is that things are more workable than they seem. And I feel pretty confident saying that across the board, even in the case of grief. Things are more workable than they seem. Once we see clearly what has happened and how we are relating to it by default, and we remember with practice, that we're going to talk about in a minute, that we have a choice about how to relate, that we can make a difference, things get easier. One more short story before I move on. My daughter, I have two daughters, 10, almost 11, and 8. My 8-year-old's a very picky eater. Going out to dinner, which sometimes my mind thinks, well, this will be relaxing, but my experience tells me something else. So we're at dinner the other night, and she finally decided she likes beef. She'll eat a beef taco because she loves pigs, but she doesn't really care so much about cows. So I'm thinking, oh wow, there's something else she'll eat. That's great. Now there's 3 things. So we ordered the beef taco, And I'm getting ready to relax and have my meal. They had stuff that I could eat and everything. So it comes, and it's the plate, and it has, the taco has the beef, but it has cheese on it, and she loves cheese. It has tomatoes over here, it has rice. The person puts the plate down in front of my daughter, she gives me a look, and she slumps in her chair as if to say, I'm not eating that. So right away, my, my resistance goes up, because now I'm not gonna have the dinner I thought I was gonna have. And so I'm sort of talking to her about it. I'm like, you don't want to eat that? She's like, no. I'm like, why not? She's like, it has cheese on it. I'm like, but you like cheese. Not when it's on the thing. I like the cheese on the side. And she was so upset that she like literally was in the corner of the booth and wouldn't even engage, the conversation. So I gave it a few minutes, and then I tried to tell her, we can work on this. You can, once you're done being so upset that it's not what you want, tell me what you want. We'll talk to the waitress. We'll see what we can do. Well, she finally got around to that, and the waitress came back with a taco that just had beef and cheese on the side, and she ate and, worked out. But it could have gone another way. It could have gone another way had she been unwilling to shift. Unwilling to, and the only thing that I think allowed her to shift was an acknowledgement of her discomfort, that things weren't the way they wanted, she'd wanted them to be, and the invitation to have your feelings about it, and then relax a little and let's see what's next. And so we can all, kids, adults, it doesn't matter how old we are, that's how our system works, and we can give ourselves that same experience. So the way that we do that is a practice called mindfulness. And mindfulness is both a quality of attention that allows us to see clearly what our experience is as it's unfolding, including all the thoughts we have about whether we like it or not, and the discomfort in the body or the comfort in the body that goes along with those thoughts. Thoughts and emotions co-arise. They come up together. So mindfulness is this quality of attention that allows us to experience our lives as they are unfolding, and allows us to see what we think about that and how we feel about that and where we're noticing any sensation in the body. We all have that. God bless you. We all have mindful awareness. You don't have to turn into anyone else. You don't have to go out and get it. You have it. You have it. We have to practice it, exercise it like a muscle for it to sort of get stronger. It's always available to us, but we have to remember that in order to take it out and use it. So it's that quality of attention, and there is also a set of practices, little exercises, that we do to help build up that quality, to make it stronger, so that it's there when we need it. And we do need it, lots of times. So there's not enough time for me today to teach you about meditation, which is a formal exercise for cultivating mindful awareness, but I did give you a schedule with some classes that are ongoing if you want to drop in. But I want to tell you that that's what meditation is. It's an exercise for cultivating, deepening mindful awareness. And I want to tell you that there are lots of informal practices that you can do, and those count. So meditation is very helpful. It is a formal practice, and it's very helpful to have both formal and informal practices, but today we're going to do an informal practice. We're going to do a chocolate meditation. So this is a piece of dark chocolate, and everyone should have this. Okay? Then I will give you this one. Let me pass that back. So don't eat it yet. Let me give you yours. If you need one, raise your hand. Raise your hand. All right. Everybody in this row okay? Good. Good? Okay. Anybody else? Thank you. Anybody else over here? All right. So let me give you the instruction first. So mindfulness is a quality of attention where we are taking in as much information about our current experience as possible, right? We're taking in whatever's there, basically. We're paying attention in a deep way to what we're doing and to what's happening as we do it. So we're going to do that with this piece of chocolate, all right? So I'm going to give us a few minutes to eat this. What I want you to do is unwrap it slowly. You can do that now. Unwrap it slowly. And just like before, as you were paying attention to what's happening in your mind and body with the yes and the no, pay attention to what's happening in your mind and body as you do this chocolate meditation. Unwrap it slowly. And when the chocolate is out of the wrapper, put it in your hand, the chocolate. Look at it. Look at it. It'll melt, so don't look too long. Look, but take a look. Take a look. And then bring it up just under your nose and close your eyes and inhale through the nose. Smell it. Notice what's happening in your mind and body as you smell it. We'll talk about it in a minute. Just notice for now. And then you can, I'm sure it's already starting to melt, but take it out and just rub it around on your lips a little bit. Rub it around on your lips a little bit. And again, notice. Notice what's happening, right? What's going on in there? What's going on? Now, when you're ready, put it in your mouth, but don't bite it. Don't bite it. Put it in your mouth. Go slow. Go slow. Put it in your mouth. Let it sit there for a minute. It's okay if it melts in your mouth, right? Let it sit there. You can close your eyes if you want to. Be deeply in this experience. Notice as much as you can. And when you are ready, take one bite and pause. Don't rush. And then slowly continue to chew and keep noticing what's happening in the mind, in the body, in the mouth.
You only know.
Well, you can share that in a minute. And then even as you, when it's fully, chewed up and you're ready to swallow it, notice the swallowing. Notice that experience. This is all, it's experience. Everything is experience. Everything that happens in our life is experience, and paying attention to that with care and interest is mindfulness. And then even after you swallow it, notice the taste that might remain in the mouth. What else is going on in the mind now? Okay, so how are we doing? Is everybody done? Okay, now let's talk about that for a couple of minutes. Who wants to say what? Yes, in the back, and then Kathy.
I don't know, this type of chocolate, I just like to chew. I don't like it in my mouth. I don't like the way it feels. It like coats my mouth. And
Yeah.
I don't know, it feels weird.
Not your favorite kind of chocolate.
I like all kinds of chocolate. As you know, I ate already there before you told us. But I don't know, I just want to like get it over with and just
Okay, right. So that comes up. Anything can come up. That's the thing. Another thing I love about mindfulness. Nothing is excluded. We don't have to not say anything. Your experience is your experience, and it's all okay, right? We're not judging this. We're just saying this is what it is. So thank you, Kathy.
Well, I just love being present, as you know. And I like the mindful eating. And so for me, it's just being present and just knowing the chocolate and not thinking about anything else.
Thank you. Did everybody hear both of those comments? Thank you. Any more on this side of the room before I go here? No? Okay, on this side, what did you notice, or what would you like to share? Yes.
It felt enormous in my mouth because I was going so slow. I couldn't eat it as fast as I wanted to. I was like, this is much bigger than I remember. But finally, you let me swallow it. It was good.
Okay, thank you. Yes. Our experiences are much bigger than we know, right? When we tune in, it's like, wow, there's a lot going on here. Yeah, thank you. Yes.
The smelling process made me think of, I don't know if everybody else experiences this, but I can remember smells from when I was really, really young. And it's a sense that I don't think about a lot, but it really does trigger a lot of things in your mind.
Yes, thank you, yes.
I noticed that everything else in my life was put to the side while I was trying to figure out how to deal with this chocolate in my face.
So you were really in it.
Yeah.
You were really in it. That's it. That's what we're talking about. Yeah. Anyone else? Any more comments? Okay. Yes. And then okay. So 1, 2, and 3. Yes.
Well, I'm so much on autopilot that if I was to have that chocolate any other time, I'd throw it in my mouth, chew it and swallow it and be done and want another one.
Yeah.
Instead, it was like I put it in my mouth and it was like it didn't quite fit horizontal. It had to go sideways. It was edgy, but then it started melting. It's like I was noticing all these things about it. And I said, okay, I'm gonna chomp on it slowly. And it's like, boy, this has a lot of resistance, you know. And then finally, my teeth came together. It was like a whole, totally different experience because it wasn't on autopilot.
Right.
You know, and then I said, I'm gonna chew slowly on the next one. So it was like a totally different. Even just feeling my teeth come together through the chocolate was different.
Exactly. So we're on autopilot an awful lot. And one of the habits I'll share that's on your handout is to slow it down. Just slow it down. Whenever we slow down, we're more likely to be more aware of what's happening. We're more likely to remember that we can choose how we want to relate to this, chocolate or whatever, a child with a taco, whatever it is. So slowing down is important because autopilot is a habit. It's a habit. It's conditioning. There was a person in the back, right there in the front. Okay.
Well, picking it up and holding it, I started to smile. And then opening it and then smelling it, it was just instant happy. And I'm like the other lady that said too, I would just pop it in my mouth, chew it, and be done. And like it just the more I let it sit there and melt, the more happier I got. And I was like, oh my God, I've never had such a great piece of chocolate. The wrappers too, I don't know if you know, have sayings in them, and it's great because it says, "Feel free to be yourself." And I think those little sayings just make the experience that better, more, happy.
So it's a really good point. When we are satisfied, we discover that we don't need more. We don't have to have more. We have this, and this is good. I like this. I'm connected to this. I'm experiencing this. I'm satisfied. So, and then Leanne, and then we'll move on. You had something you wanted to say?
I did. So I noticed that I was a tiny bit judgmental about eating the chocolate. Like I found myself thinking, oh, I wonder what the percentage of dark chocolate this is, how much sugar is in this piece, and then I said, oh, stop. Just stop thinking. Just enjoy the chocolate.
Right. So the it's another good point. Everything you've said is right on. The judging mind is always there. Always wondering about this, that, and the other thing. Maybe somebody's mind said, you shouldn't eat chocolate, it's only 8 o'clock in the morning, you know? My mind said that when I thought about doing this exercise. I was like, no, we'll do it. All right, so with mindfulness, we still have liking and disliking, but we know it. So it's not like all of a sudden we don't like stuff or not like stuff. That's still going to happen, but we're aware of it. So what does this mean for everyday life? We can cultivate these habits of being more fully present to what's happening as it's happening, to notice whether we like it or not, what the mind is doing with it, what the body is doing with it, to be simply aware of what's happening, to be aware when we are resisting something that we might be getting in our own way, right? Resistance and reaction go together. They're like twins. So when we are resisting something, we're more likely to react, which means we're more likely to say and do something we regret. And if you remember at the very beginning, I said the only 2 things we get to control ever are what we say and do. So with awareness, we are aware of resistance as well. We are less likely to react, more in control of the things we can control, our own speech and behavior, which shapes our relation to life, ourselves, one another, kind of one moment at a time. So this is very practical for life. And research also bears this out. 2,500 years of mindfulness practice before science and neurology and psychology even. People have practiced this and benefited from it, which again is how we know about it today. It was an oral tradition. So if it didn't benefit people 2,500 years ago, I wouldn't know about it now. I wouldn't be standing here talking to you about it. But the good news is, or I should say
recently, there's a lot of research on the subject, and it's starting to bear out a lot of what people know from their own experience over these 2,500 years. And one of the things is that engagement with life, active engagement with a piece of chocolate, with a child, with whatever, is correlated with happiness, much more so than the activity itself. So they did this study, Harvard did a study in the last few years where they gave, smartphones to a bunch of freshmen, and they said, we're going to ping you, at random times, and we're going to ask you 3 questions. What are you doing right now? Where is your mind right now? Is it on the thing that you're doing, or is it somewhere else? And how happy are you right now? So what they found after polling lots of people and over thousands of data points, that the correlation between engagement, paying attention to what you're doing as you're doing it, the correlation between engagement and happiness was strong. The correlation between the thing that you're doing and happiness was not. So what that means is you could be happy washing the dishes if you're paying attention to the act of washing the dishes. You could be happier doing that than if you were doing something we think is fun, but you're not paying attention. Your mind is somewhere else. It's at a meeting that you're going to have tomorrow, or it's something that happened yesterday, right? Okay. So on your handout, I have on the bottom left some habits that just reading about them is not enough, sorry to say. So practicing these will actually begin to change the nature of your relationship to things, and you'll begin to see how you are more at ease with your experience as it is. When we're at ease, we're more open. That's what the yes is about. We felt at ease, we felt more open, we felt lighter, we felt good, right? When we feel threatened, our resistance goes up. That's what the no was about, all right? So I would like 5 volunteers to just read one of these each aloud. The bottom left side of the page under mindfulness, skillfulness, happiness. So, Lori, thank you.
Slow down on purpose.
Slow down on purpose. Yes, in the front row.
Lean into your life, one experience at a time, with interest and friendliness, with wise and kind attention. Watch your mind, feel your feelings, notice your physical body.
Thank you. Number 3.
When you find you are leaning away instead, attend to your resistance with the same quality of attention, with interest, compassion, and care.
Thank you. Number 4. Volunteer. Yes?
Embrace imperfection and change, or at least accept it with a friendlier attitude.
Thank you. And the last one, Margaret.
Speak and act with kindness towards self and others whenever possible. It is always possible.
Thank you. So I'm just going to summarize with a few more points, then we have time for a couple of questions if there are any questions. So a great deal of our happiness and well-being comes about from our intentional activity. Again, what we choose to do with our words and our actions, the only 2 things we get to control anyway. Relating to life on purpose is a great source of our happiness. It puts us at ease, whether we like what's happening or not. Because we come to understand that sometimes we're going to like what's happening, sometimes we're not. And it's not as big of a deal as we think it is when we don't like it. But our mind will make a big, 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 big deal. But with our mindful awareness, we understand that sometimes it goes my way and sometimes it doesn't. And we can be more at ease when it doesn't. And we can enjoy it more when it does, like the chocolate, right? Mindfulness practice trains us to be less distracted by the things that push, we're less pushed around by life and more in charge. So we're less distracted by when we don't get what we want. We're less thrown about. We're more grounded. We're more steady. We're more stable in the body, in the mind. And we have more confidence about how we can relate to things more skillfully. And this doesn't just come automatically. It comes from experience. It comes from practice. That's why we call it mindfulness practice, right? It comes from our experience and from being aware of our experience. So mindfulness cultivates the kind of happiness that is unconditional, which means it's without a cause. There's nothing external that happened to make me happy. I'm cultivating the happiness myself by being fully present to my life as it is, by dealing with stuff I don't like when that comes up, by dealing with and enjoying stuff that I do like when that comes up. So our level of engagement with our lives, with ourselves, with one another, this is what determines our ease in our mind, body, skin, and homes, and this is what contributes to real happiness. Mindfulness practice helps us step out of that busy mind stream and be more aware of it, and to remember that we have choices about how we want to relate. And this is good news, because as we learn and we practice relating to life as it is, moment after moment, whenever we remember, we get more skillful. Mindfulness leads to skillfulness in relating to life, and that leads to happiness. So it's kind of a feedback circle. And what neuroscience is learning now is that our brains are actually changing. Remember I said how the negativity bias was hardwired and the stress response and all that? Neuroscience is now showing physical changes in the brain at the neural level with folks who practice mindfulness, so that these new habits, this new way of relating to life as it is becoming wired in the brain, which means that we are learning it deeply, and then over time, things will arise spontaneously. Just like reactions used to arise, now mindful awareness will arise because it's stronger, right? But we have to practice in order to build that up. So I'll pause here. I'll ask if there are any questions or comments. Yes?
Not a question so much as a comment or observation. This reminds me of Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Successful People and the 3-bucket kind of system. We can place everything in life into 3 buckets: things you can't control nor influence, things you can control and influence, or things you can just influence. And so I'm trying to live a life that way, where if I get stuck in traffic, I realize I can't really control that or influence that, so don't worry about stressing out about it. But it's always tough to do that. So this is helping to remind me about focusing on that area.
Thank you. And I want to add that when we feel stressed, it doesn't mean there's something wrong with us. Stress is a natural response to life sometimes. And remember, that was the first part of the understanding. Understanding that life has this, that, and the other thing is really critical. Otherwise, we keep expecting it to be what we want, and we're continually stressed about that because it isn't. It isn't. Thank you. Yes, over here.
Reminds me of the saying, when the going gets tough, the tough get going, because there's 2 meanings. You know, you either step up to the plate or you go away.
And when the going gets tough, you know, you can sit down. You can sit down, close your eyes, notice what's going on in your mind, notice what's going on in your body, and then you can go. Right? That's part of the slowing it down. So we can always sit down and take a break. Yes, Kathy, and then over here.
So I've noticed that, you know, one of the things that you mentioned and touched upon is something that I've observed in my own client work, and that is that and I can be guilty of this too, but when we get upset, you know, like that Louis C.K. has this thing about, you know, oh, now I'm feeling, let me go on my cell phone.
Yeah.
You know, I find that even in our retreats, like, people are having a harder time sitting still, being reflective, journaling. Just become this society and this culture that wants to move, you know, full speed ahead, so we don't feel our feelings. And so to tie in with that question that I have for you is, can you tell me a little bit about the classes? Because I've noticed that some of them are half hour, some are 45 minutes, and some of them are an hour.
Yeah.
So what would that look like?
Thank you. So the half-hour class is there for 2 reasons. One, to give people a chance to come and practice before they go to work, so they can still get to work on time, because that's 7:30 in the morning. And the half-hour class is very little discussion. It's a guided meditation. Just practice. Mindfulness meditation. 45 minutes, there's a little bit of practice, there's some discussion, and there's more practice. With the hour-long sessions, it's the same format, but there's more discussion and more practice. Everything's a little bit longer. Thank you. So drop in. Thank you. And then there was a question here.
I really like the lean into your life step or point
because somebody just mentioned to me a while ago that having an experience always seems better after the fact when you're reflecting on it. You know, when you're if you go out and you see a show or something, you're experiencing all kind of things other than the music on stage. You're in, you know, this, that, and the other thing, getting there, and then perhaps it always seems better the next day because then you forget about the traffic that you had, you know, getting there, and, you know, somebody bumping you from behind or standing behind somebody you couldn't see. And I always thought that was interesting. I never really thought about it, but it's true that sometimes, you know, you put aside your being there to deal with kind of some of the negative stuff all the time, that it takes maybe a day to reflect and eliminate some of that negativity to find the positive. And what do you think about that?
I think, and that's if we're lucky, because I think often what can happen is we miss out on, if our attention is not on the experience, but rather our perceived negativity of what we don't like, then that's what we're going to remember. So being able to recollect and savor the positive after the fact, that's good. But I think it's, for some of us, we can be stuck in the negative, largely because of what I mentioned about the brain and the negativity bias, but also conditioning. If we have that habit, so there's a teaching that says, you know, and this is bearing out in brain science, the more we practice anything, the better we get at it. So if we just practice being mad at things not going our way, we're going to get really good at that. And if we practice being fully in our experience, whether we like it or not, we're going to get really good at that. And so the brain scientist, there's a guy, Richie Davidson, who's instituted University of Madison, Wisconsin, was awarded a $50 million grant from the Dalai Lama's Foundation to research the effects of contemplative practice on the brain. And what he says is, our brains are always learning something. It's our responsibility to help them learn stuff that's good for us, stuff that can be helpful. Yeah? Thank you. Any other?
I just had one question. I prefer mindfulness and being skillful and approaching situations, but I'm sure I've read lots of material that says when you get in an uncomfortable situation, you can say, I'm uncomfortable and I don't like this, and you feel better after you do that. What would you say about that side of the coin?
Yeah, we're sort of narrating our experience, so it's okay to say what's going, I mean, we have to be the judge of, is this the time and place to say that, right? But you can self-narrate, that's very helpful. Oh, I'm feeling really annoyed. Noticing aggravation, noticing this, noticing that. So, and I used to say that aloud when my kids were little. I would say, noticing aggravation. And that was what I said instead of, you know. So it really does help to narrate your experience from the inside out. And then the joke is, don't worry, there's no speaker that's going to broadcast, you know, what's going on in there to the world. So it really is for you. You take a look at what your mind is doing, what you're thinking, how you're feeling, where you notice it in your body, and just be aware of that. That is practice. That's mindfulness practice. It's okay to be uncomfortable and to know that and to say that, and sometimes to say it aloud. Yes?
Following up on that, I did notice that, you know, when you go to therapy or you go anywhere and they say recognizing the problem is half the battle, then you can move forward. When you were doing the yes-no with the bell, and I try to be very experiential when I'm living my life, the yes was associated with many parts of my life. I instantly went to, oh, all of these yes experiences, being a lucky, happy person. Then when the no came, I went right to certain aspects of my life that are always no. And it's very uncomfortable, and it needs work. And I will try to do everything I'm supposed to do here to change that. But I do think it's when you're in situations like that, it's really helpful, and I have a hard time doing that, beforehand saying, this is a typical situation that's going to stress you out. This is your resistance that you practice, and it works not in your favor, or not in your family's favor, or not in whatever situation's favor. This is what you practice here, and that grid, try and bring it down, which if you don't mind, I'm going to take a picture of.
Yeah, that's fine.
Is that all right?
And the antidote to resistance is interest. Take an interest in what's happening, especially when you don't like it. That is the antidote to resistance. And awareness is the answer to almost anything. So being aware of what our habits are, what our conditioning is, what our reflexes are around life, around stuff, around the same situation that comes up all the time, being aware of that is the beginning. And with awareness, then we can begin to affect change through practice. I think we have time for one more question. Yes.
Just a comment, just to piggyback on what you were saying. If I may suggest another possible way to reframe what you just described is, up until now, this is how I've responded. So then that kind of triggers your memory. Okay, now I have a choice.
Or to say, I have a habit. This is what I coach people. I have a habit of doing this. Now, when we've changed that habit, then we can say, I've had that habit. Now I have this one. But I have a habit of blah, 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 blah. And that raises our awareness, too. It's like Margaret's thing, like narrating to yourself, I'm uncomfortable, or saying that aloud. Yes?
The other thing is, when you are around people that you care about, that you see are suffering, it's very hard to know what to do to help them. And so I find I have to trust that my being okay in the situation is all I can do, and that's going to not irritate that situation worse. In other words, just by being an example, instead of always trying to control and help other people, which I maybe cannot. So just sort of be an example of somebody who can be happy in a situation and let them figure it out themselves.
So I'll sum that up by saying, just show up and be of service, whatever that looks like. Just showing up is often enough. So it's often enough. But if you think there's something more you can do, you can try that. So I'm going to bring this to a close now, but I want to ask you, were we going to do the raffle first and then the evaluations?
Why don't you go ahead and hand those out?
Okay, I'm going to so the evaluations, there are blue papers on the end of each table. Could you take one and pass them down? And I just want to draw your attention there that in the month of November, I'm doing some free mini coaching sessions. So just read the eval carefully. That's on there. If you'd like that, make sure that your name is there. And thank you.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Marianne.